Okay, this is our 7th grade class from Parker School in Waimea, Hawaii, and we've been thinking a bit about the World Peace Game, and we'd like to share some of our ideas with you. Beth?
Okay, we were thinking about the 50 problems. So some natural disasters that we can do are earthquakes, tsunamis, volcano eruptions, tornadoes and hurricanes, and flooding, stuff like that.
And then Samika, do you have something to add?
For like fun, we should have some unrealistic challenges, like dinosaurs coming back and friendly aliens and teleportation, evil aliens, and like time travel.
Okay, and then Zoe, do you have a few more?
I have man-made disasters like pollution, businesses going bankrupt, major blackouts, wars over resources, and illegal immigrants.
Okay. Julia, do you have something to say about like the military pieces?
Yeah, so I think for to represent where wars are going on or where their soldiers are, I think we should just use the little military men that you can buy at the dollar store, and for every one it represents 1,000 or 100 or 10 troops or something. Yeah.
And then how about like the tanks and the missiles?
I think we could get little pieces for that too from the same little package. Ben, did you have to add to that?
I was gonna say that for like missiles, we could use like Nerf bullets, because I know a few people have a lot of those.
I have 400 from my youth.
Okay, and then Taylor, what about the markers, like to say how much population there and natural resources and stuff there are?
Use those little sorry things. What are they called? Markers to represent a population.
And so, how many people would each marker represent?
It depends how many people we have in each country.
Just to represent a different amount.
That's what I was thinking. So, yeah, the colors can each like represent different amounts of people. So, if there's one country, they could have like smaller markers than the other ones. Okay, and then Parker and Nate, you had something to say about the currency?
Well, for the currency, it would be kind of confusing to have the real life currency that we do have nowadays, which is like pesos in Spain and Mexico and all foreign countries.
And then
And
the
dollars,
euros,
US,
dollars.
Between that, so we're just going to have, for the entire game, one global currency, like units. Of
Okay,
some
so what are you going to use for our currency then?
We're going to use monopoly money.
Okay.
And so monopoly dollar equals 1 unit, or 10 units, depending on what we're going to do. Haven't decided that yet.
And we are going to talk about the map, locations, and climates and stuff. And our friend Parker generated a map on a paint program, I think, on his computer. And he would like to show you guys that.
Here's a map that I made for the World Peace Game. It's just a bunch of random islands and continents that I made with little home cities where the 3 countries, well, for our class it only has 3 countries because it's such a small class that we can only make 3 groups. So each of these big continents like this one, and that one have sort of city where they start out. And on each of the continents and islands are sort of biomes, like desert thing, which is the really light sort of yellow, which is rich with oil and sand, and pretty much desolate, dangerous, go and kill anyone who comes in there. Then there are also volcanoes on each of the continents. Some have multiple volcanoes, some have only one, which are always erupting, sometimes having some ores. If the continent doesn't have any other place to get ores, they can go there to get resources for ores and metals and such. Then there are also forest biomes, which are pretty much just large forests, jungles, rainforests, different animals and stuff in there. main resources for wood. Then there's also grassland, light green, just open landscape for building, nice places to build homes and stuff. There's also rivers and mountains, which are the sort of brown areas, which are higher elevation things going up to the second level. Like you can put like a little fort on one of the mountains and shoot down airplanes. Then there's also ore rich areas, which are the gray areas on each of the continents except this one. Where you get most of the ores from, it's just large area with only stone exposed with some ores and such. And then there's some tundra down here, just open flat land full of snow, some pine trees, and well, that's it.
So Shelby, you were going to talk about the board.
Yeah, so there's 4 different layers of the board, and the 4 layers are outer space, air and space, ground and sea, and undersea and underground. And what we were thinking is we were just gonna stack 4 small desks on top of each other, and we could just use like clay to mold like the shape of it, kind of, or like paper to draw out the countries.
Okay. And then Ben and Hunter, you had a little bit something about the biomes, like the different regions.
How each country, there's like, we have a bunch of countries, and there is a bunch of different biomes like tundra, desert, grassland, forest, and depending on where you are on the equator, there can be different forests. Like how tundra areas that have more desert or tundra might have a bit more oil in places that are mostly forest or grassland, and how each, just about every, looks like every continent has a volcano. And there's a lot of neutral islands that are up for claim, kind of, and each continent and each climate zone on the island has the different pros and cons, like.
So how about like in a desert? What would be the pros and cons you think of living in a desert?
Well, I don't know about desert, but like forest, it'd be like wood and stuff, so that would be real overpopulated because people would take the wood and build houses and a whole bunch of goods like that.
And you would think maybe in like one of the continent that, in a continent that has more of a desert area, that's mainly desert, maybe the people might be nomadic possibly, or they could like have a certain shelter area like in a canyon or underground.
But then this is today's time, not
But you never know.
years ago.
Like 10,000 years ago.
People do still live nomadically nowadays.
Yeah, but
There are
very,
nomadic
very
people.
small population. Also, in like tropical climates, there would be like, for example, here in Hawaii, would be like food, and you grow crops and
Everything would kind of
wildlife,
grow here.
and
So it'd
like
be more popular.
commercial or companies stuff, economic ways to make income. So for a country that was tropical, that probably could make some money off of tourism. Then yeah.
So it'd be really overpopulated or more populated than say like a tundra area where it's really cold. But then they would be more rich because there'd be lots of oil in the ground. With here, everything grows, so they would make trade off of oil with food and produce.
So what about the cards?
So, well, each country could have like 50 cards, 25 negative, 25 that are positive towards your country. And so some could be like
Disasters and stuff, the unrealistic or the regular disasters, like certain biomes collapsing, forests suddenly burst into flames, the things that those people addressed on before.
positives could be like finding gold or riches, finding oil,
Economy boost.
yeah,
And then also like cures for diseases and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cures for diseases,
New technology,
weapon systems,
yeah,
stuff like that.
discovering treasure.
Yeah. Make corn like really cheap. We get like tons of corn tortillas. Sorry.
For some of the human activities, it could be like littering, or random violence, or deforestation, or overfishing. And we could use like little symbols. So like for random violence, we could find like a tiny little plastic gun.
So like how would this affect the game?
Government.
Have to pay for it. The government like maybe might have to pay for some of these things. Like if people are shooting things, the government might have to like work to resolve problems and stuff. And then like if there's a lot of littering, they'd have to organize people to clean it up. And if there's a giant outbreak of disease, they work on like producing vaccines, and that costs a lot of money. So stuff like that. This is my mind map, and basically it started the game, and then it just sort of branched out into all these different parts of the game. Like, because, well, there's the parts, and then you've got, like, there's the culture of the people in the game, and how that would, like, maybe arise to conflict or disputes about things. And then political, like, how the government works and how that might affect how they act in the game. Buildings, like, different places on the board, because that can affect things too, like human relationships, geographic features, like mountains and valleys and oceans and stuff like that. The economic stuff, like what would you do for the money, how, like, stock markets, the socially, like with the people, how that would affect things, weather, the wild cards, and military pieces, like what you would use for that, and who would be in charge of the military and things like that. And then the problems, and we know that there's like political problems, economic problems, military problems, and social problems, and those are just all sort of like start to branch out. And then when you look at it, like some of the different categories of problems have some of the same problems under them, and it just sort of keeps branching out and coming out with more and more things. Like under economic things, what would you use for, what would like you use to get money, and who would use those resources, and what would they be buying things with, and stuff like that. And then the rules that I haven't really gotten to yet. Government, like different types of government, how that could cause conflict among people. The board, what would we use for the board, how would we make it, and stuff like that. And basically what it does is it just sort of like shows you how everything is so like interconnected and interrelating. And it's just sort of like helpful when you're trying to understand how all the different pieces fit together.